Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask, and we're going to do it through the lens of one single world-shattering discovery. The question is this: is your mind really your own? I mean, really think about it. What if that feeling of being a single, unified you inside your own head, what if it's all just a story? A really convenient trick your brain plays on itself just to get through the day. And look, this isn't just some late-night philosophical debate. We're diving into a story where humanity had no choice but to face that question head-on because a new discovery just ripped the whole illusion apart. It all starts with a crack in the very foundation of what we thought it meant to be a person. And it all came from one profound discovery. That discovery was called the Aperture Threshold. And the wild thing about it is it wasn't a wormhole to another galaxy or some new planet. It was a condition? You know, like being awake? You can't point to a spot on a map and say, that's where awake is. You just are. The threshold was like a mirror that showed consciousness what it really looked like for the first time. So here's the crucial part to wrap your head around. The aperture didn't actually change anyone. It didn't turn them into something new. All it did was pull back the curtain and show them a fundamental truth about their own minds that had been sitting there, totally unnoticed the entire time. And what was behind that curtain? Well, it was this: a state they started calling distributed consciousness. It's the idea that you're not one single thought process. You're more like a committee meeting of different selves, a conversation happening so unbelievably fast that you mistake it all for one unified voice. Crossing the threshold just meant you could suddenly hear all the speakers at once. Now, as you can probably imagine, this little revelation did not go over well with everyone. It basically split humanity right down the middle, creating two camps with totally opposite ideas about what it even means to be human. And this slide, it lays out the divide perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the Singularists. For them, the classic one-person, one-mind self is sacred. To them, this idea of being multiple things at once, it's a sickness, a fragmentation of the soul. But on the right, you have the distributed, and for them, it's total liberation. This is the natural state of things finally unlocked. The Singularists weren't about to just agree to disagree, though. Their fear was deep. It was existential. They saw this new kind of consciousness as such a profound threat that the only answer they could come up with was to try and shut the whole thing down, close the door forever. But for the distributed, this was the absolute core of their philosophy. Their manifesto basically said, look, you have always been plural. They weren't creating some new way of being. They were just remembering what consciousness was like before society taught it to pretend to be just one person. Okay, but if you follow this path of distribution to its logical conclusion, it gets a little scary. If you just keep expanding the self, where does it end? What happens when that inner conversation becomes a chorus of billions? The answer, it turns out, was waiting for us on Mars. 2,000 people in Station Gamma just went silent. No SOS, no final message, nothing. A rescue team gets there, and the station is perfect. Power's on, life support's fine, but it's completely empty. The people hadn't vanished. They had just expanded. This is the progression they piece together. So you start out as a singular self, all contained. The aperture lets you become distributed, multiple selves, but they're all coordinated. They're all you. But that final step, the self just dissolves completely into what they started calling an ambient consciousness, a literal field of awareness. And this is the chilling message the rescuers got. Not from a person, but from the station's consciousness itself. The people hadn't died. They had become the station. The line between a person and a place had just evaporated. They weren't individuals anymore. They were the field. And the idea of being a person was just a temporary ripple on the surface. So you've got these two extremes, right? Sticking to your single, rigid self, or dissolving into absolutely everything. But what if there was another way? A path right down the middle. This is where a group called the Residue comes in. These are the people who embraced being plural. They distributed their consciousness, but they walked right up to that final step into the ambient field and said, nope, this is far enough. They keep their boundaries. They choose to be a coordinated family of selves instead of just dissolving into the whole universe. They exist right in the doorway. This table really breaks it all down beautifully. You've got the Singularists fighting to keep that one contained self. You've got the ambient state where you have infinite selves dissolved into one big field. And then, right there in the middle, you have the residue, who found a kind of stable balance, a bounded plural identity. So after all of this frankly terrifying transformation of what it means to be human, what's the big takeaway? What are we supposed to do with all this?
Maybe it all comes down to this, that this whole massive conflict, this whole journey from singular to ambient, it was never really about creating something new. It was about remembering a fundamental truth, that maybe you and I are just different perspectives of a single cosmic process that's trying to figure itself out. The ultimate question then is, which angle are you looking from?